Hello, everyone. Good to see your faces. I wanted to take a moment today to acknowledge that we're into the fall. We're beginning to wind down this year-long series about actualizing and sustaining healthy Zen communities. So I'm really glad to see you here joining us. I also want to mention we arranged this event quite some time ago. And in the past couple of weeks, we received a lot of emails from folks saying that today was a particularly hard day to make. And so I want to recognize everyone and thank you for taking the time out on your Saturday. I know you have lots of options, and we're so glad you're here with us today. And then also to say hello to the folks who are watching this later on YouTube. And we hope you'll be able to join us for the next part of this series on November 1st. So I have the honor of introducing Geido Grossman. Sensei Grossman is a member of this SCBA Ethics Committee and a former member of the SCBA Board of Directors. She began her Zen path at the village Zendo as a student of Roshi Enkyo O'Hara, and later continued her practice with Southern Palm Zen Group under Sensei Jane Jishin Beisash. Geido is a fully transmitted teacher and brings a deep commitment to Sangha service and integrity in her practice. And she's joining us today from Delray Beach, Florida, where she lives with her husband, Bernie, and their cat, Izzy. Geido, thank you for being with us.
Thank you, Kaigan. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. It's with deep respect and gratitude that I have the honor of introducing our speaker today, Roshi Joan Hogetsu Hoeberichts. Roshi Joan is a senior Zen teacher in the White Plum Sangha and the founding teacher of Heart Circle Zen in New Jersey. In addition to her longstanding Zen lineage, she brings to this work decades of experience as a licensed psychotherapist, integrating the wisdom of Buddhist practice and the nuanced insights of trauma-informed care, ethical leadership, and spiritual integrity. Her teaching has long addressed one of the most important and often overlooked aspects of Sangha life, the responsible use of power, the necessity of boundaries, and the courage it takes to care for one another with ethical clarity and compassionate presence. Roshi Joan's approach is grounded in a rare blend of psychological depth, spiritual rigor, and deep humanity. Whether she's guiding ordained clergy or lay practitioners, her work continues to illuminate the path towards communities that are not only awake, but safe, trustworthy, and whole. We are truly fortunate to learn from her today as she shares her insights into how Buddhist communities can hold power wisely, create conditions for healing, and model ethical leadership as part of the Bodhisattva path. It's also my pleasure to introduce Plum River Klein-Meyer, and she works as the program manager for the Buddhist Healthy Boundaries course and as the Buddhist spiritual advisor at Northeastern University, where she accompanies undergraduate and graduate students on their spiritual journeys. Before working in higher education chaplaincy, she graduated with a Master's of Divinity in Buddhist Studies from Harvard Divinity School and completed 2 units of clinical pastoral education, working at Brigham and Women's Hospital as an interfaith chaplain. Please join me in welcoming them both to the day today.
Thank you, Geido, for that wonderful introduction. It's really a pleasure to be here and speaking to so many of you that are interested in this topic. I got involved in Healthy Boundaries teaching about 6 years ago. This course was originally developed by the Faith Trust Institute, founded by Marie Fortune. And about 5 years ago, we began to convert the material, which was essentially focused on Christian clergy, to a Buddhist audience. And the thing that really motivates me then and now is the fact that when there is a boundary violation, a serious boundary violation, the Sangha is really shattered, and people leave the Dharma, and many never return. And to me, that's kind of heartbreaking, because the Dharma for me has always been very important and a primary central guide to my own life. So I've been teaching it right from the beginning of the Buddhist Healthy Boundaries course. And it's a pleasure that so many of you have signed up today. I really feel a lot of gratitude for that. So thank you all for being here. So I'm going to share my slides now, hopefully. Okay. So this is the central understanding about power. If you look at this wheel of power and privilege, power is in the center. And right around the center are all the categories where power is held. So as I take you through this wheel, I'd like you to identify where you are. It's really important to understand this material from a personal standpoint. Where do you hold power, and where are you vulnerable? So under skin color, white holds the most power. Under education, post-secondary, i.e. college and graduate work, hold the most power. Under ability, able-bodied holds the most power. Under heterosexual, sexuality, heterosexual is the most powerful. So just to pause for a second, as you go out from that central circle, you move towards the next most powerful. So this whole center circle is on the edge of power. Gay men have more power than lesbian, bisexual, pansexual, or asexual folks. And of course, heterosexual is the most powerful. On neurodiversity, neurotypical holds the most power. Neuroatypical is sort of medium, and significant neurodivergency is the least powerful or the most vulnerable. Under mental health, somebody with robust mental health is the most powerful. Next is mostly stable, somebody that may have some anxiety or some depression, but is mostly stable and functioning, is the next most powerful. And out on the rim is those who are vulnerable, who really are not psychologically sound. The next pie chart here is body size. So a slim person has power. An average person has maybe a little less power, and a large body size, I think we call that fat. This is a little confusing, because if I think of a large man, I think of a large man with power, but I think this is meant to be somebody that's overweight. On the next one, on housing, somebody that owns property, owns their own home, is most powerful. Somebody who is renting or in a sheltered housing situation is next powerful. And then the most vulnerable is somebody who is homeless. And then the next one is wealth. So the rich hold the power. There's no question about that. The middle class have a middle amount of power, and the poor are on the edge. And language, English, speaking native English is the most powerful. Learned English, English with an accent, is the next most powerful or the next most vulnerable. And the most vulnerable are those who do not speak English and are monolingual. They only speak one other language. And the next one is gender. So a cisgender man holds the most power. A cisgender woman is next. And then out on the edge, on the fringe, are transgender folks, intersex folks, and non binary folks. And then citizenship. So the most powerful is citizen. The next is a documented, somebody with papers. And on the edge is undocumented. And we all know how much risk they are in today. So just take a moment and really think about where you are on this chart. And I want you to note these notes on the right. Power is about resources. So the more resources you hold, the more agency they enable. And power may take form in social, psychological, spiritual, or physical resources. The realities of power and vulnerability are always present. If you hold power, you can't really get away from it. And lastly, power is relational and contextual and intersectional. So in one situation, you may hold power, and in another situation, you may be totally anonymous and nobody may know who you are. So it's not static. So we're going to go into a short discussion group. And these are the questions I want you to hold and discuss. How much power do you hold, and where and when? And discuss the power that priests hold, especially in a sangha. For one thing, they have keys to the Zendo. Just having keys to open the door gives you a certain amount of power. They also know ritual, and they wear robes, and they have advanced knowledge. This gives them quite a lot of power, even though they're not the teacher. And the key thing here to think about is, do you identify more with your oppressed or vulnerable parts, or with your privileged and powerful identities? So you'll be invited to move into a breakout room, and you can decline the invitation if you don't wish to be in a breakout room. But the breakout room will be about 15 minutes, we decided. So I hope you'll go for it. Okay, so spiritual leaders often have a lot of resources. And this is a recapitulation of what we just went through. But I want to recapitulate it because this is the source of their power. They're educated. They're often viewed as enlightened. They have a guardianship over sacred symbols, sacred rites, sacred rituals. They have spiritual authority over others who seek wisdom. They have the authority to interpret sacred texts and teachings and to give talks on them. They have moral authority, the responsibility to name and to teach right and wrong, and others seek guidance for their actions. They have consistent access to and influence over their Sangha. They're assumed worthy of others' loyalty and trust. institutional titles, authorities, and responsibilities, Sensei, Roshi, abbot, and they have access to finances and control over the physical space. And they have, I don't know how true this is for Buddhists, but they have some social standing inside and outside the spiritual community. Inside, certainly. Outside, I don't know about that. So, this is the source of their power. Men who are spiritual leaders often talk about not feeling powerful in ministry. And that simply means that they don't feel in control. Uh, this feeling denies their real power as a spiritual leader. And denial of one's power and resources is the first step towards misuse of that power. So the moment you deny that you have power, you think you're just one of the guys or one of the Sangha members. And therefore you treat the rest of the Sangha kind of like your friends or your buddies. And this does lead to serious problems. Women and non-binary folks, on the other hand, who are spiritual leaders, more often talk about not wanting power. And this likely arises from the experiences of abuses of power and the mistaken but understandable belief that power is bad and we shouldn't have any. Everybody should be equal. We should all be on the same level. Again, this denies our real resources and our role as spiritual leaders that can very easily lead us into misuse of power. So denying our position of power does not diminish the power or other people's perception of your power. Being powerful or having power is not about feelings. It's about resources, and either we have resources or we don't have resources. We may casually use the term, I'm feeling vulnerable, to describe any time we're uncomfortable, confused, or anxious. But this does not mean that we lack resources to deal with the situation. When we are truly vulnerable, it means that we lack sufficient resources to deal with the situation and our boundaries may be violated, resulting in harm to us. But what they're reflecting, I think, is very real, and it has to do with not feeling in control. And that is a very real feeling in ministry. So ministry is kind of a Christian term, but it serves us because we don't have a similar, at least I couldn't find a similar word for it. So it is a profession. So people who ordain and become priests, or people who become lay teachers, they're entering a profession. It's a calling. It involves specialized knowledge and understanding and requires education. There are standards for performance, which members are expected to meet, and there's accountability to those who are served. Power and authority inherent in the role to be used in the interests of those served. So the interest of those served is really key. That's what we're there for. Teachers, priests, lay teachers, we're all there to serve our Sangha. So the goals of a healthy ministry are maintaining the integrity, first of all, and protecting those who are vulnerable, Sangha members, employees, volunteers, students, staff, and others. And our goal is to pass on the Dharma by training and empowering new teachers and new priests before we die. The ministerial relationship applies to anyone in a leadership role. So all these people hold power. Priests, lay teachers, assistant teachers, senior students, meditation instructors, even Zoom meditation leaders, leaders of children and youth programs. All of these roles have power. And the power of priests and teachers must serve the student. As soon as they begin to serve ourselves, as soon as we begin to serve ourselves, do what's in our best interests, we're misusing our power. Students' vulnerability stems from, number one, their yearning for something. This yearning is often not understood, but it's there. And student vulnerability is not equal. So some have more vulnerability and some have less, but they are still vulnerable to their teachers' praise or or abuse. Students have recognized that they need a teacher and they've sought one out. They can't resolve their spiritual search without teachers. That goes back to that yearning, that mysterious yearning. Teachers have influence, teachers have expert knowledge, and they have an intimate relationship with their students. So just to go back to this wheel of power privilege for a moment. All those on the outside ring are more vulnerable as students. If they are trans, if they are intersex, if they're queer, if they're undocumented, if they're dark, if they don't have an education, if they're disabled in some way, if they're lesbian, bi, pansexual, or asexual, if they have mental health problems, if they're overweight, if they're homeless, poor, non-English speaking. In all those cases, these students are the most vulnerable. So I want to talk for a moment about projection. There are two major kinds of projection in Zen: the projection of power and the projection of Dharma love. Students are not aware that they themselves have spiritual power, and they project their own power onto their teachers. Students need their teachers to be powerful. And most of us fall in love with the Dharma once we start to practice. And that's a very powerful emotion. And that emotion is frequently confused with love for the teacher. Many students want to be close to a teacher, and they want to feel special. Their desire to feel special makes them particularly vulnerable to a teacher's seduction. Students who have affairs with teachers believe they are consenting adults until it all falls apart. And teachers are lonely. They have a need for that intimate relationship. And unless they're aware of their own loneliness, and unless they take care of it outside the Sangha, they tend to indulge in romantic liaisons with their students. And this is a big problem. So it's really important for teachers to recognize their own loneliness. Even married teachers are lonely. And single teachers have a real problem, because where are they going to meet a mate? And there are no consenting adults in a relationship between a teacher and a student. No matter how mature a student is, there's always an imbalance of power and authority. And there's either explicit or implicit coercion. It's very hard for a student to reject a teacher's attention. Very hard. They're afraid of insulting the teacher. They're afraid of offending the teacher. They're afraid of being put on the outside, having been on the inside when they get special attention. And if they reject the teacher, they're going to be on the outside. So this is really important to register. No consenting adults. So when it falls apart, and some of you mentioned this in the breakout group, the Sangha is completely shattered and shocked. People have lost their spiritual home. It's really, really sad. The student who was the recipient of the teacher's attention is humiliated and hurt. People leave. They leave the Dharma altogether. The teacher may be dismissed by the board or sanctioned. Sometimes there are lawsuits, lots of investigations, a lot of money is involved. Very few sanghas have a lot of money, so this is pretty much really a disaster. So now we're going to take a 10-minute break and come back. So we're going to also, the breakout wasn't quite long enough in our session. I don't know about the other sessions. So we had planned 15 minutes for this, but I think it should be 30 for everybody to really have a chance to discuss this. So this is a case study that we're going to take into another breakout session. I'll read it and then it'll be in the chat for all of you to look at and discuss yourselves. A 30-year-old single mother from Mexico saves up money to travel to the US for a retreat. She was impressed by the clarity of the meditation instructions of the teacher in his podcasts and in the book he wrote called Ultimate Freedom, which was translated into Spanish and several other languages. On the fourth day of the silent retreat, in private interview, the teacher tells the student that she is making amazing progress and has the potential to become a Dharma teacher herself. He spontaneously hugs the student and tells her what a lovely person she is and that he is glad she has come to this retreat. He asks her if she is interested in organizing a retreat that he could lead in Mexico. So I'd like you all to go back into your discussion group and discuss the various elements of power and vulnerability and the potential boundary crossings, even though we haven't really touched on what a boundary is. I think everybody has a certain understanding of that and or boundary violations in this example. So look in particular at the power and the vulnerability. And we should take a half an hour for this. Let's see, that would take us, maybe not, 25 minutes. So I just have a few, that's the end of the formal presentation, but we're going to spend some time on discussion and any questions and answers you've got for the whole group. I want to say a few things about the second part, November 1st, which is how good boundaries in sanghas keep us safe. So the focus on part 2 will be how boundaries keep us safe. and we'll talk about what boundaries are and what happens when they aren't maintained. And I also want to say that this is kind of an introduction to the 5-week Healthy Boundaries course that the Healthy Boundaries, Buddhist Healthy Boundaries course, which we run 5 times a year, and we'd like you all to take it. So there's actually a course starting on Monday of next week. Is it tomorrow? Monday? Next Monday? I think it's next Monday. Anyway, you can register for that course if you're interested through Buddhist Healthy Boundaries. And we'd be more than happy to welcome you to that course. There are a few spaces still left in it. The next course after that is in January, and then there's a number of courses scheduled throughout the year. And those courses go substantially deeper, and we have more time really to look at our personal experience in this realm. So I'm going to open I see a question. Kim. Go ahead, Kim, unmute yourself.
Yes, okay, it was unmuting. Just a comment about the longer course. One of the reasons I'm here and not in that is that it's all offered during the week. So this weekend offering is quite nice. Just feedback for your organization that if you ever wanted to offer the course as a weekend offering, that would be helpful for some of us.
There is a course scheduled for next year, which is on Saturdays.
Yes.
So it's 5 Saturdays.
October 2026 will be a Saturday
Next year?
course of this. Yeah.
Thanks. So now I'm opening it up for everybody to ask questions or to make points about their experience of the course or anything else you want to say. Oh, and if you have a question, my preference is that you raise your hand using the little reactions button at the bottom of your screen. And if you can't do that for some reason, please put it in the chat and we'll get to you. Koku.
Hi, just to say to everyone, I did the 5-week training with Roshi, and it's the reason I'm here. Come back for a refresher. I did it like 3 years ago, and it was so valuable to me in understanding these kind of power dynamics, because even if we take and follow the precepts, as Roshi shared at the beginning, we can just be unaware of how much status and resources we have access to and how students see us, or even in those positions that Roshi laid out, if you're just leading a meditation sit or something like that, or have the keys to the Zendo, it puts you in a privileged position. And also, I wanted to ask you, Roshi, I know I was associated and practiced at a distance with Soku Koji that somebody was mentioning, and Sokuzan, and I know that the people there actually reached out to another member of the Healthy Boundaries faculty, Jan Chosen Bays, and I was wondering if you could say if somebody found themselves in a position where they did want to bring awareness to something that was happening in their Sangha, but as we hear so often, people actually feel that if they do that within the Sangha, it's either not going to go well, or it's not going to be taken seriously, or they're just going to be ousted and kind of othered. Where can they go? And this is for people at the SCBA as well. Is there a kind of a way of doing this at the SCBA? I know that not all teachers are members of the SCBA, but where should people go? Should they come to Healthy Boundaries? Should they go to the SCBA? Because I guess in Japan, you've got Soto Shu. I don't know how that works, but you've got a kind of umbrella organization. And in the West, that's less existent. And as I also heard, sometimes even the the teacher who transmitted someone who is committing violations won't do anything about it. So I guess the question is, what is that kind of oversight and authority? Is there something that we can go to if there's a teacher committing violations and blowing the whistle in the Sangha isn't enough?
So the SCBA has an ethics committee, and they do conduct investigations. And you can, in fact, Geido is on that committee. So maybe Geido, would you like to say something about it? How that operates?
Sure, there's a formal way, and you can access that online to elicit a complaint. And those complaints are taken very seriously and reviewed in a timely and prompt manner. And then if it warrants an investigation, that people are interviewed and that happens and recommendations are given.
So there are other Zen lineages that are not Soto Zen, and they're not members of the SCBA, so they're a little bit out on a limb. Yeah, I just came from an AZTA meeting where there were a number of members of Rinzai sect, and they don't have anything equivalent. But we're in the process of forming a care and counsel committee for the AZTA, but that will not do investigations. It's a huge task to take on investigations. So honestly, it's really difficult to solve this. Chosen did go out and she made a presentation. She did some healing work with the Sangha, but it's a mess. It's a mess, and there are a number of other, well, I can think of one other there's a couple of other Zen centers now that are also in a mess. The Sangha kind of falls apart after that. And the best thing you can do is leave. Find another Sangha, another teacher. And that's incredibly painful. It's incredibly painful. There are good things that come out of it. That projection of power that I talked about earlier, how we project power onto our teacher. When you have to leave a Sangha and leave a teacher, you inevitably take that power back. And that's a really big step in your Dharma process. So I see some other hands raised, but thank you for your question, Koku. Katie.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So I just had a couple of thoughts. One of them is I'm one of the former members of Sokokoji, and one of the things that I observed when I was there, which I didn't know when I started going, was that Sokuzan is not a part of another overall organization. I thought he was because it was called a monastery when I got there. So part of what drew me to them is I was like, good, the teacher has people that rein them in or whatever. Found out really quickly that it not only wasn't that the case, but he created his own lineage just so he could have control and power. So there's that. So I don't know what would happen if somebody going to another organization and complaining about him, because he kind of does his own thing and there's nobody over him. So it's a unique situation. I did leave because I saw that there was nowhere safe for me there. There was nobody to talk to. I didn't know who to trust. I kept everything to myself. I didn't say anything to anybody because he had a chokehold on the entire Sangha. The other thing is just a point to ponder that I've noticed in a lot of situations, not just this one specifically, but when people speak up about something that happened, how many victims does a perpetrator get, or how many incidents does a perpetrator get before it counts? In my opinion, it should be one. But we often see that people won't listen. We see people in the news right now that have had dozens dozens or even hundreds of victims, and they're still not believed. One should be believed. So I just wanted to leave that out there. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm sorry for your experience at Sokuji. Zomio, did I say that right?
Hi, can you hear me?
I can, yes.
Okay, great. I'm actually just a practical question. I'm looking for more information about the 5-week course. I did a quick look at the flyer, and the October date for 2025 had passed, as far as I could see. And I also went onto the website. So if there are more details about upcoming courses like the one you mentioned on Monday, I'd love to get a link to those if possible.
Plum, do you want to respond to that?
Yeah, sorry, the date actually got moved because of the holiday last Monday. So the first day will be this upcoming Monday. It's taught by Jen Chosen Bays and Tony Shinro Doubleday. I'll put my email into the chat also. And so if you are interested in registering for that class, we can do it today and I can send you all the materials. So if anyone's
Thank you.
interested, please reach out. Thank you.
Great. Any more questions? Any comments on the material? Mimi?
Yes, hello. In my breakout group, we talked a little bit about how there's a gap between actual behavior or misbehavior by teachers and the precepts. But my Sangha and other Sanghas that I'm aware of have an additional layer that's supposed to be a boundary. They often are called community agreements. And I was wondering what your opinion is of that, because I was, in addition to my primary Sangha, I was a member of a smaller Sangha, and somebody asked to create community agreements. And the teacher in that group vehemently objected and said that the precepts were enough and kind of turned it back like we were transgressors just for asking for community agreements. And I was wondering, what is your opinion about community agreements? Actually, I'll just be upfront. I'm a member of the Brooklyn Zen Center, and we recently had an ethical violation, and we had community agreements in place, but they didn't help. But I'd like to get another perspective because I've seen, these two cases, we had them, it didn't make a difference. And then there's another Sangha where the teacher rejected the very idea of community agreements. And I just want to get other perspectives. Thank you.
I'm not familiar with the term community agreements, but we strongly recommend an ethics code and a grievance procedure, and that's created by the Sangha. I mean, there are lots of models out there to use, but the fact that the Sangha is working on is very empowering for the Sangha. I'm on kind of a I'm on kind of a tirade about empowering Sanghas. And not that I want to disempower teachers, but it takes an empowered Sangha to stand up to a teacher. And even the best of teachers can violate a student unintentionally or just by getting mad or whatever. So having a grievance procedure is a way of letting the steam out of the room and exploring the situation. The Zen Center of Oregon has a really good grievance procedure and ethics code. The Zen Center of Los Angeles has an excellent one, really beautiful one. And it's okay for Sanghas to copy that, to really study it. So tell me what a community agreement is.
My understanding is that they're often modeled after the kind of rules of behavior that grew out of 12-step programs
Oh,
about the way that you communicate, the way that you behave. So it does specifically say things about don't use this kind of language, don't touch people without their permission. They can be very detailed. It's like a code of behavior.
I haven't been familiar with them, but it sounds like it'd be a really good thing for community to work on. And I'm sorry about all the mess at Brooklyn Zen Center. It's heartbreaking, really, for me to watch it. But you have some good teachers in there now. Yeah, I think. I see another hand raised. Ed Brown.
Good afternoon, everyone. Appreciate being here and appreciate all of you being here. I may have been around a while, but I'm kind of slow on all these things. And I notice how hard it is, for anybody, teacher or student, to change much of anything about their personality or their behavior, and to be open to hearing and how to receive. How does anybody receive teaching? I don't know. And it's all curious to me. I lead sessions now and again, once a year in the Austrian Alps, and I tried, and I have in place session guidelines, and part of that is to say, the practice is for you to take care of your space, to take care of you, which includes not getting into other people's space and letting them take care of their space. So it's kind of curious then at some point, well, aside from taking care of my space, I want to take care of the Sangha space, or the space of or the integrity of the Sangha, or the ethics, or because we don't want people to be driven out or to leave because of the boundary violations. And yeah, that's true. And over the years, I just feel I'm afraid that I've gotten maybe too attached to I'm here to take care of my space, and I'm not here to take care of your space, or to see that you don't. And I occasionally then I say to somebody, a couple sessions ago, two students got into a screaming fit with each other, and each of them came to me separately and said, "Do something about this. You need to stop them from being so aggressive." And I tried to tell each of them, "I'm sorry, but you're here to take care of your space. And, take back your fibers, and take care of your space." And so I don't know how to get somebody, and then I don't know how to get, besides that, I don't know how to get somebody to actually listen to that, because one of the students in particular kept on talking and kept on complaining to whoever would listen that, and why didn't we have a group discussion about it, and who was violating who, and and I said, we're here to do sesshin. That means being quiet, not talking, and doing the next thing on the schedule. And then he was talking within 5 minutes.
This is the problem of being a teacher and not being in control.
Not having power.
No, the power is there. It's the control that's not. Thank you, Ed.
Anyway, good luck. And I mean, look at our president. I mean, our society is set up for people to get away with whatever they can without getting arrested and called on it. And even if they're called on it, how do they can be very popular, and And so it's a challenge for, you know, I understand, like, let's have safe and respectful sanghas, and I don't know how to do that. And so thank you for your efforts, though. I appreciate your good hearts and your wholesome efforts to handle this.
Well, thank you for your comments. I see Annette's iPad. Are you there, Annette?
Annette, if you're able to come on screen, I can spotlight you with Roshi Joan.
I think she's muted. Annette, it looks like you're muted. Can you unmute yourself?
Joan, while we're waiting for Annette, I wonder if I could just add something. You know, the Healthy Boundaries course is open to all people who hold leadership roles in Buddhist sanghas or a spiritual care context from a Buddhist perspective. So we do have people who have transgressed against boundaries or violated boundaries or misused their power also in the course. And I just say that to name that often when people receive complaints, you know, it touches such a deep, or when they hear that they have caused harm, it touches such a deep defensiveness that can really bring up fears around, you know, is my reputation ruined now? And it's been very instructive through my work as a chaplain to see it's not just this goal of following the commandments and never committing any mistakes and never crossing boundaries because we're perfect and that's the bar that we all have to get to, but just it also matters how we respond to when people raise complaints, or you know, that receiving that feedback can be restorative to a relationship and to a connection and restorative of trust. So the mere act of misconduct, that's one layer of breaking the trust in the relationship. But how you respond to having committed misconduct can be reparative for the entire Sangha, I think. So I just wanted to name that, of like, it matters how you respond to the complaints and to the feedback, and that can be where even more harm is caused, is when the defensiveness and the rejection of I couldn't have possibly caused any harm comes up, I think.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Plum River. So there are procedures recommended for teachers who have had an affair with a student. They involve getting some therapy, maybe some fairly extensive therapy with a therapist who's really skilled in dealing with religious folks who have committed this kind of misconduct. And it involves, you know, in some way accepting, you know, what's the word I'm looking for, but confessing to the Sangha that they've done something that's not helpful and destructive. And then, you know, seeking the Sangha's forgiveness. But it doesn't, and I know of a couple of cases where it's worked, and it's been uplifting, actually, to see that. So it looks like Annette is ready to speak.
Yeah, thank you for your patience. It just wouldn't respond, the mute button. Just two things. One, is there a place to have access to the slides you provided? And the other, this recommendation list, perhaps, of therapists, is that something that can be made available?
I don't have a list of therapists that are skilled in this. I've known several.
Have you? Yeah.
But it could be something that we might develop. I don't have any problem with sharing the slides. The best thing probably would be to reach out to Plum River.
Mm-hmm.
And Plum, you can provide the slides to anybody that wants them or needs them.
Thank you for sharing. Okay.
Yeah.
Lower my hand now. No, lower. Okay.
The history of Faith Trust has been that all of their materials were always made available to any community that needed or wanted them to teach this material. So we've followed that. Any more questions? Senko.
Yeah, I um, I have a question about is there any report about the seriousness of this matter? Like in our group there was mentioning of data and figures. How often things go wrong and how it specifically looks like. I was curious about that. That was one question that I had. And another question, the one remark that was made that about that teachers are not prepared well enough to take on the position. And also there I'm curious about now what are the parameters to go by, or and what kind of sorry, my English is not my first language, so I have to look for words. What are the criteria that need to be fulfilled to kind of, and it's always a human affair. These are two questions that I have, and they don't need to be answered right away. And there is one remark I'd like to make, and Joan, you mentioned something about strengthening sanghas, and that's especially what I would be interested in. That within sanghas that it's a kind of that there is awareness that things can go wrong and that teachers can make mistakes. As far as I know, they're all human. And humans make mistakes, like Sangha members, also among each other. And so what I try to emphasize in the groups that I lead is that if you feel, so things can go wrong, and if you feel kind of put down by me, also by me, then let you start to talk about that with someone you trust. And not a senior especially, but someone that you feel comfortable with. And that you together think of, okay, how can we go about this so that people feel free to kind of even gossip about the teacher. Like what do you feel? What do you think? So that not so much about crossing boundaries, but also power issues. I can be dominant, and people feel sometimes. So I can get complaints. And for instance, also when with female students, then recently I got a few complaints about that I'm mansplaining, and I never was aware that I could possibly do that. I mean, hey, come on. But now I got two messages in a row, so that is a clear sign for me. Okay, I have to look at this.
Good. Glad to hear you looking at it.
Yeah, and but this Sangha needs to be strengthened somehow. And I was wondering also that, like here, I don't know if there are many teachers among us, but so also teachers can organize Sangha again, like Vattama Sangha, of course, so that we as teachers speak with each other in an open space about, okay, where does it go wrong? Come on, and it's an intimate, and it's things need to go wrong every now and then, so that you can learn from it, and we're supposed to learn as a teacher, I think. So also on teacher level, Sangha building, I was thinking, and a specific So not necessarily on things that go wrong, but anything actually.
Well, so a bunch of questions there. So I don't know of any place that holds data, a lot of stuff on the internet, but I don't know of
Reliable information.
reliable. Yeah. I suppose SCBA could consider it since they get a fair number of complaints to their ethics committee, but they wouldn't have a whole picture. As I mentioned earlier, they don't have sects that are outside the Soto Zen world. On the other points, let's see if I can remember them. So grievance procedures are really useful, and they are so empowering for the Sangha. I had a situation a number of years ago where we were on retreat, and the sanitizer we'd always used at this facility that we rent for Sesshin was not working, and so there was no way to sanitize the dishes. I instructed the administrator of the retreat and the Tenzo to use a cup of, not a cup, but a cap full of Clorox in the rinse water and then rinse it off to sanitize the dishes we were using. I guess we weren't doing orioke. I don't remember. Anyway, it's a long time ago. Somebody in the Sangha, a very powerful guy, CEO of a company, came in and changed the procedure. And midway through and told them to put all that away. It was poisonous. Nobody mentioned it to me. So halfway through the retreat, somebody got really sick with the flu, and I went in to check to make sure the procedure was happening, and it wasn't. And I was told that this other fellow had discontinued it, and nobody checked with me. So I sent him a note. He'd already left the retreat at that point. I sent him a note, which I really worked on not being as angry as I felt in the note, but the anger came through. Anyway, he was so upset that he called for a grievance procedure. And it was kind of a trivial thing, but it's not nothing when your teacher gets mad at you. It's really not nothing. That's the power issue. So the grievance procedure really worked. I apologized for getting angry. He apologized for not consulting me. And I was really impressed by how well it worked. It's the only time it was ever used. But I became a real advocate of grievance procedures actually being put in place. So that's one answer. You had a couple of questions in there. I don't know if I can answer any others.
Now, one was on that teachers are too quickly put into the position of being a teacher.
Oh yeah, well that's why this course exists, because this is nothing was ever in my Zen training, and I trained for 20 years, so it's not covered. It's just not covered. The precepts are covered, but it's this is more subtle.
Yeah,
precepts are easy to keep either, but this is important material for teachers. And the other question was about how to empower sanghas. So I'll cover that in the November talk. So come November 1st.
Yeah, I will. Yeah.
Thank you for your questions, Senko, and thank you for being here. I see we have another question from Kim. And Zena said, I got a message over time. Okay, so let's take this as the last question. Go ahead, Kim.
Yeah, I apologize if it's too complex of a question. Try to be brief. I've recently been doing some study about the dynamics of narcissistic abuse. And one of the things that I've been learning is that there's a pattern for the victim of traits that they tend to have. Those tend to be that they're trusting, they forgive, they see the best in people, they're open to considering things from multiple perspectives. And I realized in hearing that those are traits that are often encouraged in development of spiritual virtues. I guess I wondered, is there anyone in the Buddhist world who's thinking about that overlap in terms of like bodhisattva ideals and traits that could set someone up for being victimized? Is there any writers or thinkers? Does this make sense as a question?
I don't know the answer to that, but maybe somebody else does in the audience. There is a Sex and the Spiritual Teacher, which really is it was by Scott Edelstein, and he really delves into personality characteristics of teachers and predators, and that's a really good book. And it's one of the texts we use in the 5-week course. Anybody else know anything about this crossover that Kim is referring to?
Well, I do think that like we tend to focus we tend to maybe in the course context of the course focus more on structural vulnerabilities or cultural vulnerabilities within a sangha that may be risk factors. So I think it already came up too, you know, there are certain ways of interpreting the precepts that can really shut down people raising complaints. And when a teacher is sort of willfully committing misconduct, they will weaponize Dharma teachings towards that end, right? So this is a secret. This is Dokusan, like what is said here is secret. Like you shouldn't share anything that happens here. You know, we see this kind of mobilization of genuine, or you know, this distortion. So I typically think that through the course we focus more on those aspects, trying to intervene in that, rather than trying to intervene in like these wholesome qualities that students are being encouraged to develop. But it's definitely something I appreciate you naming that. I'll look into whether there are resources to your question on that, but none come to mind off the top of my head.
Thank you.
So we're at the end of our session. I'm sorry, Julie, I see your hand is raised, but I think we have to stop. Do we have to stop, Zena?
Oh, no, actually, the message is for overtime and informative attendees that although it's going overtime, it is being recorded and it will stop whenever you stop, Roshi.
Oh, okay. All right, well, let me take Julie's question then.
Yeah, actually, I was going to put this in the chat, but the chat is disabled. Just as a couple of resources for strengthening sanghas. One is there's a group called the Zen Learners Association. If you Google that, the idea is to give students a chance to talk with other students across sanghas. And we've had a pretty lively discussion about responsibilities of boards and vis-a-vis teacher power in sanghas, Zen Learners Association. And there's also a book I wrote, Keegan just sent me a chat encouraging me to mention it, calling Practicing Safe Zen, Avoiding the Pitfalls on the Road to Liberation. So didn't mean to take up your time, would have put it in the chat, but there you go.
Thank you, Julie. And is there, I think, who's monitoring the chat? Is there anything in the chat that we need to address?
I haven't seen any questions come in through the chat, but maybe we can open it up just for the end, so that people could also leave questions for that they're leaving with, that they might want some more information covered in the next session. Would that be
okay?
Is there any open questions that people would like to leave in the chat? We'll check them out. We'll save the chat and
the chat is disabled for participants.
I just opened it. Yeah.
Okay, so what Plum said is if you have a question, we'll try to answer it in the November 1st session. I hope you all come back for that. And I really appreciate everybody's wholehearted participation today. It was really wonderful to be with you.